Hello! Welcome back to this channel. This video is a quick and easy crash course about everything you really need to know before packing up and moving to the big city. Over the past few weeks, I've compiled a couple notes based on experiences, friends' experiences, to guide you guys through the basics of life in New York City for those who have never been. So if you are a college student or graduate student or even postgrad and you're moving to New York for the very first time, then this crash course is meant for you. From food places to the maps in the neighborhoods, weather, the geography, public transportation, and more, I'm about to go over the basics that you'll need to know that will help you navigate life for newcomers to New York City. So on that note, let's get started with the basics. I think as of 2021, there are 1.63 million people living in Manhattan, making it the most densely populated county in the US. And you might actually be surprised by how small Manhattan is. From the bottom to the top of Manhattan is roughly only a distance of 13.4 miles, and the widest part of Manhattan is actually only 2.3 miles. That might also give you a sense of why people walk everywhere as opposed to owning a car. New York City is also synonymous with Manhattan, which is one of the 5 boroughs, and the other 4 are the Bronx, Staten Island, Brooklyn, and Queens. In New York, you will find everything. History, art, food, entertainment, all walks of life, colleges, and far more. So let's start with the map of Manhattan, the geography, the neighborhoods, the areas, and what they're like. So Manhattan works by a grid system, which means that for the most part, the streets run horizontally from east to west and ascend as they go upwards. So at the bottom of Manhattan, the starting street you'll find is 1st Street, and as you go uptown, the highest street is 228th Street. Avenues, however, go the opposite direction from north to south and ascend in numbers as you go from east to west. And aside from the number of the street, they are also followed with an E or W, east or west, depending on whether they are east or west of 5th Avenue, which is the dividing line that goes down Manhattan. So most of the areas of Manhattan follow that general system. But with that general grid system out of the way, let's start at the bottom of Manhattan with the financial district. You'll be able to see it from a distance because of the iconic World Trade Center, which is this huge building that you can see from quite a distance away. So the financial district, Wall Street, with the New York Stock Exchange and the Bull statue. I've had mixed experiences with the safety of this place. I actually ran into a pretty traumatizing and dangerous scenario here, but I think that's a story for another time. The financial district is at the bottom of Manhattan. It has really tall buildings, and it's generally a little bit quieter because it's less central. It's also by a waterfront, and it has this really nice pier and wharf that you can hang out in with a really nice view of the ferries and the waterfront. As you go north from the financial district, you'll eventually reach Chinatown, and then Little Italy, and then Soho, all generally within a walking distance or a biking distance. So once you reach Soho and you go up a little bit, you'll reach NYU and Greenwich Village. So the NYU area, one of my favorite areas and a crowd favorite, has the iconic Washington Square Park and those beautiful historic apartments that look like they could have come out of the 1900s or probably belong to some successful but low-key book authors. And to the left of Greenwich Village is West Village, and to the right is East Village. East Village has a lot of old buildings. It has a lot of bodegas, laundromats, vintage buildings, thrift stores, small hole-in-the-wall food places, dive bars, pubs, street art, even some high schools I've seen. East Village is a very hipster and artsy area. It's very lively and rowdy, and it's perfect for foodies. This place is one of the best places in Manhattan to explore the different food options because they have a lot of cheap and famously delicious eats, some of which I'll actually be recommending later on in this video. So think this hustly, bustly, loud energy, full of young and authentic people, skate parks, teenagers, college students, smaller but old buildings and stores with character, small businesses, people hanging out on their fire escapes, buildings above restaurants, and walk-up buildings. And a lot of NYU students live there because it's actually easier to get cheap housing there. The apartments are just older and smaller. A lot of them don't have laundry in unit, so they offer a lot of cheaper options. As a general rule of thumb, the closer your apartment is to the edge of Manhattan, the cheaper it tends to be. And to the side of East Village is the East River. There's this road that extends for miles called FDR Drive, which is right alongside the water, and people run there and bike there and walk their dogs and go fishing even every day. It's a really interesting and pretty kind of path to check out. So then West Village, bordered by Chelsea on the north and Soho on the south, it had a lot of charm to it. It's less hustly bustly and it has some very charming brick, beautiful buildings, and it's very similar to Greenwich Village. Right above Greenwich Village and NYU area is going to be Union Square, which is kind of just this little park landmark thing. And then going up, you're going to reach the Gramercy area, Ray Hill, with Chelsea on the left. As we move up to the Midtown area, which begins on around 30th Street with Midtown West on the left and Midtown East on the right. As you go up, you'll pass Madison Square Park, not to be confused with Madison Square Garden, which is the stadium. Eventually you'll reach K-Town, which is on 32nd Street, and this kind of marks the whole Midtown area. So K-Town is just a couple of blocks, and it's a very popular place for people to hang out because there's stores, there's shops, there's trendy drink and dessert places, there's a lot of food, there's karaoke, there's drinks, there's Korean barbecue. So that is definitely a really popular place for people to hang out, and that is on 32nd Street, kind of marking the bottom of the Midtown area. And Midtown is more of this highly commercial area with big buildings, lots of people, K-Town, so many restaurants, skyscrapers, huge apartment buildings and luxury apartments, work offices, WeWork buildings, convenience stores on every block, Penn Station, the Empire State Building, Madison Square Park, and construction absolutely everywhere. This is kind of the more touristy, postcard-like area of New York City. Midtown is where a lot of young working people live because a lot of offices are located there and because of its central proximity to everything. Also luxury apartments, a lot of young and working people will tend to be living in Midtown. And actually, if you stand under the arch in Washington Square Park and you look uptown through the arch, you'll be staring directly at Fifth Avenue, which once you go down about 30-something blocks and you reach the Midtown area, will turn into the iconic Fifth Avenue area for shopping. And it's a very different vibe here than downtown. For example, shopping in Soho versus shopping on Fifth Avenue. Soho has a lot of designer and expensive and street style. They also feature a lot of like artistic and exhibit style. So Soho is in a way more artistic almost and less commercialized, and they also have that cobblestone street. Whereas on Fifth Avenue there are also a lot of designer stores and flagship stores, those big flashy buildings, and all the stores are divided by this big street full of cars, which is Fifth Avenue. And as you keep going, you'll reach the start of Central Park. And if you don't already know about Central Park, it's actually a huge park that's smack in the middle of Manhattan that extends 51 blocks through mid to upper Manhattan, starting on 59th Street and ending on 110th Street by Columbia. So Central Park is a very, very obviously huge and interesting place. There's so many nature-oriented activities to do there. I've seen horse-drawn carriages, artists drawing caricatures, people meeting for chess, sports, people going on boats. So it's actually this giant park, and it's very lively and fun, and it's contrasted by the large stores of Fifth Avenue, such as the Apple flagship store. As you go uptown from there, you're going to have the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side, and I honestly don't know too much about these areas. And the Upper West Side has a lot of museums, and it's more residential, less hustly bustly, it's less rowdy, there's less nightlife, and it's more residential. And as you go higher, you'll eventually reach Harlem, and then eventually Washington Heights, which is at the uppermost point of Manhattan. So, where's the best food in my opinion? Maybe I'm a little biased, but Lower Manhattan, East Village, and K-Town has a lot of food too. Where's the best shopping? Soho definitely has more of a chill, kind of walk around and experience everything vibe. Fifth Avenue is that classic shopping down Fifth Ave, lots of people, lots of cars kind of thing. And as for thrifting, there's a great thrifting scene in New York. There's places where you can get expensive vintage stuff, and there's also places where you can get cheaper stuff. A really popular place that I go to all the time that I'd really recommend is called L Train Vintage in East Village. East Village in general, as well as Brooklyn, tend to have a great variety of thrift stores. Hudson Yards as well, which is near Midtown and a little bit higher on the west side. Hudson Yards is another fun place to hang out. They have a lot of designer stores. They have this huge indoor mall. It's just an overall very pretty and cool place to hang out. So fun places to go. I just did a quick brainstorm. A lot of people hang out in Central Park. You go shopping. K-Town, The Edge, which is this popular attraction in Hudson Yards that you might have heard of. It's basically this super tall building, and they have this big balcony that you can pay to go on one of the highest floors. with a glass wall. Brooklyn also is a nice place to visit, which is kind of like a lower key Manhattan. They have a bunch of good food too, and that iconic street with a view of the Brooklyn Bridge is in Dumbo. There's also a lot of really cool bookstores. There's also a host of museums and art exhibits to go to. The Met, the MoMA, the American Museum of Natural History. There's also the Guggenheim, the Whitney, and more unique ones such as the Museum of Ice Cream or the Museum of Sex that people go to. So there's a lot to check out in that scene. And of course there's the whole night scene. There's rooftop bars, clubs if you're of age, and I think just like restaurants. Honestly, there's so many places worth trying and experiencing in terms of food. And now, segueing into food, I came up with another quick list of food places that I feel like are iconic and that you guys need to try or at least hear of in your mind. So the first thing is Veselka, which sells pierogies, and they are a very famous place in East Village. And then there's this whole ass street called St. Mark's on East 10th Street. This street full of Asian food. They have Korean food, they have Chinese food, have Thai food, Japanese food, all different kinds of experiences and price ranges. They have boba, and they have a couple like Asian beauty stores and stuff. Spot Dessert Bar is also on that street, and Spot is so good for dessert. They have these really cute creations that are actually so delicious. Everybody knows New York pizza is New York pizza, and the two places that come to mind for me are Joe's Pizza. You have to try Joe's Pizza. And there's also Prince Street Pizza, which is in Soho, and it's also this super iconic pizza place in New York. While Joe's has like that thin crust New York style pizza, Prince Street Pizza has like a thick crust. The only time I've ever been able to try them was at like 3 a.m. or something like that, or maybe 2 a.m. right before they closed, where I was actually able to grab like the last slice. So also Chinatown, Little Italy, tons of restaurants there. Can't even list like specific ones off the top of my head because there are just so many options. And if you guys like boba, there's a really popular place in Chinatown called Tiger Sugar. Also, halal carts. I don't know if all of them are trustworthy, but from specific ones around NYU's campus that I know are super popular, namely Farouk's, which is on East 14th Street. It's literally so cheap too. It's like $6. Bagels are huge in New York too. You could try Tompkins Square Bagels, Brooklyn Bagels Company, even a deli. Also recommend Thursday Kitchen or Mokyo Kitchen. So they sell Asian fusion tapas. Another place I want to recommend called Nomo Kitchen, and it's in Soho. It is pricey, but it's mainly the setting. So dining is like really a highlight of New York, and it's so much fun, and there's all types of experiences, all types of cuisines. I usually go to Trader Joe's for all my grocery shopping, so I was lucky because I lived only 2 blocks away from Trader Joe's, but if you live somewhere further than that where you probably don't want to carry 2 giant bags of groceries, you want to pick a store that is close to a subway station. Delis and bodegas are all around New York. Usually delis and bodegas, they have like a hot food bar where they can make sandwiches, pastas, wraps, bagels, breakfast sandwiches, usually for pretty cheap. And then they also have the other convenience store foods, snacks, ice cream, drinks, that kind of thing. There's also grocery and food delivery options such as Blue Apron, Fresh Direct, HelloFresh, or this Asian grocery delivery service that I use called We. I need coffee in my life, so I came up with a list of coffee that I drink when I'm in the NYU area all the time. And I want to start with Motto, which is this very low-key coffee shop that's right by NYU, super central to NYU, like in between classrooms and stuff. And this store is amazing because everything from the food to the drinks, all types of drinks, everything $2. So, and this is a very hole-in-the-wall kind of, so I definitely recommend it. But keep it on the deal so they don't raise prices. Around NYU's campus, I go to Blue Bottle, I go to Starbucks. They have a Starbucks Reserve, and they have a student Starbucks. They have the Bean, they have Think Coffee, which is one of my favorites, La Colombe, which is also really nice, Stumptown Coffee Roasters, Bluestone Lane, which is something I never heard of until I went to New York. Bluestone Lane is super cool, it's super chic inside. And then they also have coffee from carts that people get, but I've never gotten them before, or you can just make it at home. Now let's talk weather. So in the summers it gets hot and humid, and in the winters it gets really cold and dry and it snows, and sometimes there's storms, blizzards, that type of thing. You definitely want to consider getting a cooling or heating unit if your apartment doesn't already have one. In the winter, everybody's skin gets so dry, so you have to stock up on lotion in the winter. For clothes, buy winter clothes during the summer. So if you're watching this and you're going to New York, buy them right now after you watch this video though. You will get everything for only half the price or less, and they'll go back to full price when it's the winter and everybody's winter shopping. You also want to get shoes that you can wear in the snow. I have never lived in a place with snow before, so I didn't realize how difficult it was to walk on snow and ice until I got to New York, and it is really slippery, and if you're like walking around in the winter, you'll see tons of people around you like maybe almost slip. So you definitely want to get a pair of like boots or something that has like a grip. And in the winters, you also want to layer up. It tends to be that you'll be constantly bouncing from freezing to sweating, because for example, when you leave your apartment, you'll be really cold, just enter the snow wearing a bunch of jackets, but as soon as you step into the subway, you'll probably be sweating because it's going to be so hot, and then as soon as you step out of the subway, you're going to be so cold again, and then when you go into the building, you're going to be hot again. So it definitely helps to layer up. In terms of transportation, people walk everywhere, and Manhattan is not that big, so it tends to be relatively convenient to walk places, especially with the way the streets work. Manhattan is way too small and dense for everybody to have a car. It's just not a convenient form of transportation, and you'll have to pay a lot for parking. So an alternative to walking and taking the subway is using a city bike. So there's a lot of city bike stations where you just download the app and you scan it, you rent a bike, and then you dock it at another station. And you can also buy like monthly passes and a variety of different plans. I feel like younger people don't use taxis as much. I've never really ridden a taxi because I just use Uber or Lyft instead. As for the subways are a very easy and convenient way to get around. I just type in my destination on Apple Maps and I screenshot the directions in case I lose connection in the subway, so I can still look at it, and it'll tell you which subway line to get on, which stop to get off, which to transfer to, and then how to walk from there. After a while of taking the subway, you'll probably get a good sense of directions and the layout of Manhattan and how the trains work and which stops lead to where, and it'll be kind of intuitive for you to find your way around after a while. So you're gonna need a Metro card to get into the station, and they have machines at every station for you to purchase a new Metro card or add money to your Metro card. They also have like other packages for Metro cards too if you're like a frequent or daily user, so you probably want to look into those. While the subway is generally regarded as safe, you definitely want to be careful in the subways and just be aware of your surroundings and try to just follow general rules of safety. Obviously, New York is expensive. One of the most, if not the most expensive place to live in the US. When searching for an apartment, just know that most require you to show proof that your income is at least 40 times the price of that rent. Either that, or you can use a guarantor, which is basically somebody that is proof for you, for example, a parent if you're a child and you aren't yet earning that kind of money. So what you need to know about New York apartments is that they are expensive and they are small. A lot of them are crusty old buildings, and some are like pre-war. There can be cockroaches, there can be all sorts of problems here and there. So that's just something to be aware of. If you haven't heard of it, StreetEasy is the most common website that people use to look for housing in New York City. So with StreetEasy, you can filter for the price range, the borough, the locations, and it will filter through for you, and there's a way to connect you to a leasing agent if you're interested in a certain place. Luxury apartments in New York are apartments that generally are more aesthetic. Usually what differentiates luxuries is that they also include amenities, which is what makes them more expensive as well. Usually luxury buildings have a first floor with a doorman, a gym, a recreation center, and a laundry room. Luxury apartments though have also their own range of prices. You can still find the luxury apartment that's less nice for cheaper. And of course, you can also go on the other end and find a really nice luxury apartment. When you're looking for apartments, what will help you is by listing down your criteria range. What is your budget? What is your price range? What neighborhood and what borough do you want to live in? And keep in mind that Manhattan is pretty much by far the most expensive borough. You can find cheaper places that are much nicer in surrounding boroughs. You also want to look for the amount of bedrooms you want. Do you want a studio? Do you want one bed? If you do get roommates, that also drives the price down. Amenities, washing machine in building, washing machine in unit. No washing machine is okay. Proximity to a subway station. Are you okay with a walk-up or do you want an elevator? In New York, apartments go very quick and very last minute, so I would say it's fine and even beneficial to start looking within a month. Lastly, I just compiled some notes of general advice, which is don't block the path, keep your eyes on the road, you don't want to get hit by a car. Make sure your phone is always charged. Share your location with a friend in case of emergencies. Be careful and be aware of your surroundings when you're in messy areas or when you're out at night, because you never know what can happen or who you're surrounded by. Follow the flow and don't go out on your own too late at night. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. You never know what will happen unless you try. And I think New York is generally a welcoming place if you're just willing to put yourself out there. I think you'd be surprised by how many things you actually can do if you just do it. New York is a pretty fast-paced place to be, and a lot can happen in a day, and it can be easy to get overwhelmed. So one piece of advice, to find that thing that keeps you grounded and helps you recuperate, whether it's a friend, whether it's a place, an activity. For me, what helps is taking a walk along the East River or visiting one of my favorite dog parks. Just find a place or a thing where you can take a break and just relax whenever you need it. And as for some more general advice, if someone is being weird or threatening, just don't engage, don't make eye contact, and just keep going until you can remove yourself from the situation. Do what makes you feel safe, and alternatively, don't do what doesn't make you feel safe. Be polite, but also assertive. If something bad happens or if someone is rude to you, don't take it personally. Learn to toughen up and believe in yourself and what you can do. If you're still watching, give yourself a round of applause because you have officially made it through my New York City survival guide for newcomers. If you learned something new in this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and also to subscribe and hit that bell notification for more upcoming vlogs, videos. I wish you guys all the best of luck for whatever circumstance or opportunity brings you to New York. And I hope you guys all have an amazing experience, or at least something that teaches you something about yourself. Leave a comment down below about things that you like or don't like about New York City. Or if you live in New York, then leave a tip that you think newcomers could use. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to follow along, and I'll see you guys in New York.